Hello and welcome to the EDM Prodcast. My name is Aiden, aka Artsy, and I am your host. If you're new here, this is a show where we interview producers, artists, and industry professionals who are in electronic music production. And today, I am joined by Dan Giffin. Now, Dan Giffin is a Ableton certified trainer and host of the Ableton Music Producer Podcast. He is currently based in Indianapolis, and he has taught over the years artists such as Mac Miller, Machine Gun Kelly, and the band Perry, the ins and outs of Ableton Live. He also produces under the alias Philia, where he writes jazz-infused bass music with elements of funk, soul, and he also performs it live in a band where he drums and does improvised DJing along with a saxophone player and a keys player. In this podcast, we dive into topics such as why he thinks most music production is actually a mental game and how overcoming mental hurdles can help you become a better producer. Later on in the interview, he also emphasizes things like the importance of finding a mentor and having a structured way to learn music production. Towards the end, we talk more specific production techniques, such as a few of his favorite Ableton Live devices, plugins, and some of his favorite creative techniques that he's using at the moment. Now, as always, before we dive into the interview, which I can't wait to get into, make sure you head to edmprod.com/courses if you want a structured approach to music production, something we talk about in this podcast, where you can learn topics like the fundamentals, sound design, songwriting, and much more. But let's not waste any more time. I'm going to jump into the EDM Prodcast with Dan Giffin. Awesome. Welcome everyone to the EDM Prodcast. Today I'm here with, actually, I'll redo this intro. I wanted to ask you, how do you pronounce your last name?
I do, dude, you should leave that in. I do this all the time, man, on my podcast. I swear, like, I've botched so many people's names. It's embarrassing. It's Dan Giffin, not Griffin. Everybody loves the R for some reason. There's no R, but yeah.
I saw that there was a, yeah, we'll leave this in. Do it. I saw there was there's no R, and I was like, all right, it's Giffin or Giffin, but it's like the image file problem. It's like, is it a GIF? Is it a GIF?
yeah, dude, names are weird. People just insert like imaginary letters into people's names these days. I know. It's fun.
It's like Sam, who I work with and used to host this podcast. Everyone calls him Sam Malta. But his last name is Matla, so it's Matla, and everyone just says Malta because when they look at the word, they're like, "Oh, it must be Malta." Like
Malta,
names are weird, eh?
Yeah, for sure. My mom went to college with a girl. Her name was Rosie Butts with 2 T's. Like that's man. There should be some rules. There should be laws against naming people.
Yeah, totally, man. Well, it is good to have you on, man.
Thank you.
Obviously, you are the host of the Ableton Is it Ableton Producer Podcast? Did I get that right?
Yeah. The Ableton Music Producer Podcast.
Music Producer Podcast. Awesome, man. Yeah, and you're obviously a whole host of different things. You're an artist. You're an educator. You play in you're part of a kind of producer band, which I'll let you dive into later on. But yeah, man, we'll obviously dive into everything. Do you just want to give us a bit of a background of how you got into music and how you're doing the things that you're doing today, I guess?
Yeah, man, totally. That's a loaded question, but I appreciate you. Thanks for having me on the podcast. First of all, I appreciate it. Big fan of what you guys do as well. But yeah, man, I started just kind of like the typical story. Went to college, went to a university, didn't like business school, thought it was boring, didn't want to do the whole 9 to 5 thing. And so I was like, I'm just going to pursue music. So barely finished college, which is actually funny now because they wanted me to teach Ableton at that college. It's kind of like almost fail out of school and then go back to teach it. It's hilarious. But I went to New York City and was really blessed to study underneath some really talented Ableton certified trainers. And this was like back in 2000 and this has been 2012. So it's been a little while. And Daniel Wyatt, shout out to him. After I finished like a 1-year Ableton training at Dubspot, which RIP Dubspot, used to be university. It's not there anymore.
Yeah.
but they were one of the big major players for YouTube tutorials for Ableton Live.
Oh man, back in the day, yeah.
Yeah, they were the ones that really put Ableton on the map on YouTube, really.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I got to go to that school. It was a lot of fun. Made some good connections, good relationships, which is a lot of the industry. Just the people you meet, connecting with other people, and found myself hanging out with some circles. I ended up fast forwarding a couple years later, moved to Indianapolis, which is where I'm actually at now, thanks to COVID. So here, my family's here and everything. For now, I'm here, but yeah, and then just ended up having a bunch of friends when I moved to Indy hit me up and being like, "Hey, can you teach me Ableton, or can you show me this or that?" And then now I'm an Ableton certified trainer as of last year.
Congrats.
Thank you. There's about 300 of us, and just now traveling and teaching and then producing a lot these days, especially because we've all been sitting at home the last year and a half now. So it's more time for music, right? So my project Philia, I've been producing a lot of music as Philia for about 2.5 years now under that project name. So that's just me, but then I have a live band. And one of the best pieces of advice somebody gave me is like, practice and play with people that are better instrumentalists than you are, especially for collaboration, right? Like, and I always tell my students and people, collaboration is key. You know, I'm doing things and producing things in ways I never would have if I wasn't stretching myself and learning and working with other people that like push me harder. So I have 2 great bandmates. One plays saxophone, one plays keys, and I DJ and play drums live, and it's been fun. Yeah.
Awesome, man. Yeah, that I've seen a few of your like setups and it looks really cool.
Thank you.
Like having the kind of a band format. I guess it's like a state of permanent collaboration, which is good because like if you just kind of produce on your own for a long time, which is something I've done, and I think a lot of producers out there probably do, like you get used to the way you like to work and you can actually very easily like pigeonhole your workflow. But I feel like working with, whether it's other producers or even just vocalists or other producers, other instrumentalists, sorry, like it can just open up a new way of working that you don't really consider. Is that something you found as you started kind of working more with other people?
Yeah. I think it's like a combination of that and just being so interested in different styles of music.
Right.
You know, like the guys I play with, Andy and Curtis on keys and sax, they're like very traditional jazz cats. Like they've been playing jazz since they were like little kids. And I grew up playing some jazz drums, but I just kind of became like a bass head sort of that has a jazz background that's like infused with like a buffet of like funk and like R&B and hip hop. So I think
cool.
like having all those different influences is really cool. Like not only as like an artist, but as a collaborator too. You stretch yourself in more ways.
Did you listen to a lot of like different music when you were growing up and think that's kind of a reason why you have such a wide variety of influences these days, or?
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. Honestly, moving to New York City was probably one of the best things to happen to me in that regard because it's so diverse. I mean, you can find whatever you're looking for in that city. Truly.
Right. Yeah.
So I was just going to shows. Dude, I was broke as shit. I spent so much money on tickets going to shows when I first moved there. And I saw like Jojo Mayer actually was one of my favorite shows. I don't know if you know who that is. He's got like this crazy poofy afro. And my dubspot Ableton teacher at the time invited me to go. And it was this tiny club. There's a hole in the wall. There was like maybe 50 people there. And he's pretty well known. Like, and they call him the human drum machine because they'll just they'll program crazy rhythms and he'll just like play it instantly on a drum set. And it just sounds wicked.
Wow. That's cool.
Yeah, and so that was one of the best shows I've ever been to. There's no big production, nothing crazy. He was just in the middle of the room with a drum kit, and he had a DJ next to him, and they just went nuts for 3 hours. Like it was crazy.
Some of those like sets are the funnest ones, right? Where it's just like it's not a huge production or even a huge crowd. It's just everyone's vibing and they're having fun. Like who is performing is having fun. Like, yeah, man, that's interesting. So how long were you in New York City for?
It wasn't that long, man. It was I was in there for about 1.5 years, and then moved back to Indianapolis because I was supposed to move in with a roommate in Brooklyn. It didn't work out. I did some drum session work down there as well, in like a small, tiny studio that Barry Manilow was like co-owner of.
Oh, right.
super random. But
cool.
Moved back to Indy because I was broke and ran out of money, didn't have a roommate, basically. So that was like 2013. And then I've been in Indy since. And it's actually, Indianapolis it's actually a very nice place to live as far as cost of living and for touring, because you've got like a lot of big cities in the area. You've got like Chicago, you've got Nashville, you've got Detroit, you've got Columbus, you've got St. Louis. There's a lot of capitals and major cities within like a 4-hour drive at most.
Wow, so, that's true. Yeah, because it's Midwest, right? Not very familiar. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I guess there's always the allure of, being in the music world, of like always wanting to be in one of the major cities, whether it's New York or LA. Chicago to a degree, maybe. If you're in like that scene, Nashville, like those kind of things. But do you kind of like living outside of one of those kind of hotspots, or is it something you eventually still want to move back to one day? Or
I'm not going to announce it right away, but Denver is looking really nice these days. I've got a lot of friends there, and
nice,
it's beautiful. The mountains, I don't know if it's because everybody's high in Denver, but everybody's so happy there. Everybody's just so happy. It's like, it's a good culture, man. I really love Denver.
Yeah, cool, man. Nice.
The music scene. Sorry.
No.
I was just gonna say the electronic music scene seems to be growing and pretty strong there.
Because you got like artists like, is Mr. Bill based there still?
He was. Yeah. I think he's in Santa Barbara now.
Right.
One of the Santas down in California. Yeah.
Right.
I think it's Santa Monica, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
He was just on my podcast actually.
Nice. Yeah. We had him on ages and ages ago, like when Sam was hosting, I think. Yeah. Yeah. Good dude. Awesome, man. So you mentioned as well, I think somewhere in one of your bios or something like that. So you come from like a drumming background. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. Do you find that particular like element of knowing how to play drums influences like the way you produce and even the way you think about music in general?
Yeah, definitely, for sure, man. A lot of popular music, especially in electronic music, is so rhythm based.
Yeah.
Whether it's the melodies that are bouncing around or whether it's just like the core kick snare rhythms. A lot of it's all dance music is just rhythm. I think a lot of that drumming background for me has like really helped as far as producing. And a lot of times, I don't always start a song the same way. A lot of people ask me like, well, how do you start a song? I was like, well, I don't know. Sometimes I just sample a goose on my deck outside because I have tons of geese. I have a serious goose problem. I just sample that, turn it into a weird synth pattern and throw a beat behind it. Sometimes I just, it's different. So for me, nice. But the drumming background has definitely helped. And I play a little bit guitar, not enough to save my life, but even just finding a quick melody, you can do so much in Ableton Live where there's like endless options of creativity, which is why I love using it. And I've also used Pro Tools, and I'm Logic Pro 10 certified. Nice. But Ableton's kind of been my main squeeze. I love it.
Yeah. Once you've gone to Ableton, it's difficult to use anything else for like the bulk of your work. It definitely has a nice workflow.
It does, man. And like when it first opened it, I didn't even know how to get sound out of it for like a few hours. I was like, wow, what is this crazy monster alien looking thing? But, I think for any newer producer out there listening that's like getting into music production, there's definitely that learning curve and you can beat yourself up and get really frustrated and quit. And I see that happen a lot. But once you eventually, it's like anything else, you're building muscle memory, like playing a guitar. I feel like producing is just like that. It's the more you do it, the better you get. And having a good mentor was huge for me, fast tracking a lot of my skills as well. I think that's really important because you can go to YouTube University and try to teach yourself how to produce. And then you're going to end up not asking the right questions sometimes, or not even knowing the right questions to ask, really. So
that's it. That's what it all comes down to, is like, there's so many great free resources out there, but each of them only solves a tiny piece of the puzzle. And it's like, you don't even know how those pieces all fit together yet. I think like a mentor or some sort of structured learning, like someone who's showing you the way that the path they went through, and breaking that down for you is key, especially if you want to learn. Like it speeds it up as well, right? It speeds up the way you learn, or how long it takes you to learn.
Totally.
Well, speaking of like mentoring and teaching, obviously you are you run the website Live Producers Online, which you mentioned earlier, which is, for those of you who don't know out there, is basically a resource and website dedicated to, well, as the name suggests, teaching people how to produce with Ableton Live online.
Yep.
Yeah, man.
True.
Do you want to dive a bit more into like what that is and like what you aim to do with that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, right now it's just two of us running the site, but it started out as I was teaching at a recording studio here in Indianapolis. I'm not there anymore, but it was pretty well known, called The Lodge. It had a lot of history.
Cool.
And a lot of my students from there that I was teaching after the 6-month class that I would do teaching Ableton Live, they would have more questions, and they'd want to go deeper and whatever. So I started the website initially just for people who maybe I wanted to continue to connect with, do like live streams, post a bunch of videos. Now it's actually turned more into like, here's a couple courses to get you started with Ableton Live.
Yeah.
Here's a couple things I'm going a little deeper. And then I'm just uploading what I call group sessions, which is just like a live Zoom hangout with me and other members, of me just diving into my projects and tracks that I've been producing, just showing little shortcuts and hacks here and there. But yeah. Also, if anybody doesn't own Ableton Live 11 is really dope. And I can hook you up with the cheapest discount you'll find online. So
nice
as a reseller. So I'd happy to help you save that piggy bank so you can go buy more plugins or something.
Awesome. I'll leave a link in the description for that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, man, that's really cool. With running the website and that sort of thing, and obviously mentoring producers through that, I wanted to ask what your experience of, when you're mentoring a producer, what do you kind of look for? Because I know there's a lot of producers out there who want to, get ahead in music, or they want to up their skills, or whatever their goals are. And I find that with certain people, there's things holding them back. I mean, particularly in the area of like mindset and how they think about music production. What are things you look for when you're like trying to find someone who kind of fits your mentoring program or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I think there's two parts of that question. I see, for somebody starting out, how do I help them, or like, and then how do I find somebody as a good fit? But I'd say for any new producer that like comes to me and wants to learn Ableton, one of the first things is just like establishing goals, right? Because some people might want to start producing with the expectation that they want to play live, right?
Sure.
So that's one thing. So first of all, let's get some tracks, let's make some bangers, and then I'll show you how to set them up live or just DJ. The other side is, I think, the mental side of producing, which I think is the hardest part. Because I think you could teach anybody a certain level of technical skill, right? But the mental side of producing, I think, is the hardest part for most people. And even for myself still, some days you wake up and it's like rainbows and butterflies and you're like just creatively inspired, and you sit down and start writing something really fast. And like the matter of a couple of days, you bust out a track. And then there's moments where you just like want to sit there and just eat crappy food and cry in the fetal position. And, you don't feel like making any music. So I think I did a really great podcast. I had Da Vinci He was really well known for the MPC and finger drumming. He's pretty insane to watch live. Like, he looks like he's having a seizure on stage. He's just going nuts. But he's brilliant, and he talks a lot about the mental side of producing on that episode. And a couple things that he really talked about I thought was really good is like really getting out of your head and into your body more so.
Cool.
And for newer producers, one thing I encourage them to do is like to find a way to love practicing.
Yes.
So like fall in love with practicing. If you can find a way to love practicing, you're going to go so much faster and so much farther than just learning a bunch of technical things. Because in the end of the day, if you're not inspired, you don't feel it, you're not going to make the music you love. So I think that's a big part of I guess what I'd like to be doing more in my membership. Not that necessarily I'm doing a ton of it right now, but what I'd like to be doing more is just posting things in my Discord. Like, you know, everybody shares some like good, thoughtful tips of like what inspired you to make this, or even just sharing memes, just a bunch of memes in the Discord of like just making you laugh. Everybody loves a good meme.
Yes,
but
they do.
But I find if you can find a way to love practicing, or just even self-help and taking care of your mental health is huge, especially after being boxed in your house last year for COVID and all that crazy stuff.
Oh man.
But and it's wild too. I was listening to Mr. Bill, you mentioned him earlier, on his podcast the other day, and he was talking, I forget who it was. He was talking to somebody about how like a lot of artists were so excited at the beginning of COVID because they're like, oh, we're actually going to have time to like an excuse to sit at home and write all this music because we're not on tour. But then if you're not actually writing music with the intention of playing it out, sometimes there's less motivation because you're not even sure if like people are really going to hear it as much because you're not touring and like all this other stuff. And so you lose some of that creative inspiration, or you start writing differently. You don't write as heavy of drops or whatever because you're not appealing to like the festival crowd, or you know what I mean? Because you're not sure if you're going to be playing. So that was kind of interesting. COVID, I feel like I wrote a lot more like chill, spacey music. I feel like during COVID more than like heavier bangers.
Totally. Oh, it definitely like for those of you who write like, you know, club music or bass music that's like designed to be played in that environment, like when you're not there like often enough to appreciate it, it doesn't have the same context. So like it definitely, I think, is one thing that a lot of producers have been doing lately. Is like we had Tizoki on the other day, and he said the same thing. Like his upcoming album, which is coming out later in the year, he said there's like one track he would classify as like bass music on that whole album. Because he just hasn't been playing shows. I think a lot of producers are in that headspace. I'm a drum and bass producer. I write pretty chill stuff anyway, but like I haven't really made anything that's like very club centric the last the last year very much anyway. So man.
Same.
It's interesting how it the context in which you write does change the music. Yeah.
So do you have more shows scheduled out in the near future?
Well, I mean, in Melbourne here at the moment, we're not in a lockdown. We were in like a kind of a snap lockdown for a while now. We have the restrictions kind of easing. We have like a monthly label show with the label I'm a part of, based here in Melbourne. But yeah, it doesn't look like we're meant to do one at the beginning of July, but we're not 100% sure if can go ahead with it. We were able to do them for a little bit, for about 2-3 months. I think we were able to do them. But yeah, it's just kind of back and forth at the moment. So we had to cancel our last one, and I think a lot of places are in that things like maybe for a little bit and then nope. Like I think the UK's been going through that recently. Like they had a bunch of shows scheduled over there, and then looks like things aren't looking so good at the moment over there now. So pretty rough.
Yeah, gotta get that Dr. Fauci ouchie.
Yeah.
Just like get that vaccine. That's what we
Yeah.
call it over here in the US. Dr. Fauci's
that's the
he's the government doctor or whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
Is that like an actual like advertisement they're using, or just like
no, I just me and my friends say it, like the Dr.
Nice.
Fauci ouchie.
Nice.
Like, get that shot, that vaccine. Yeah, but it was, I mean, here in the Midwest, man, I don't think people care anymore. Because I mean, there's been a lot of people have had the vaccine at this point. And so there are tons of shows popping up all at once. It was an explosion.
Yeah.
And which is like really crazy now for booking, because you have all these promoters and agents that are like playing catch up, you know, with only a limited amount of slots and venues that have either been rescheduled or canceled, or, you know, it's like it's a rat race of booking shows right now. It feels like.
Totally. It's rough. Like, it's just, everyone's just trying to do what they can possibly do as soon as they possibly can, and trying to align it with touring schedules and all that's rough as well. Like, it's definitely
but I will say though, like, as a positive side of all that is, I think you don't always really appreciate what you have till it's gone.
Yeah.
And so I think ticket sales are just exploding, because I think a lot of people are just so anxious to go back to live music. You know, I just played a show at one of my favorite like mid-sized venues here in Indianapolis, and we sold it out, and it was weird, man. It was weird to go back and play in front of a full audience like that. It was fun. Like halfway through, I just kind of look up, and it was like I kind of felt like I was dreaming. Like it was like, wow, whoa, this is like what it should feel like again. You know, it was like somewhat back to normal, and yeah, it was a blast, dude. It was a blast. I actually had kind of some anxiety leading up to that, because you get used to being by yourself so long, you know?
Yeah. Like going back and actually being in front of people again, like I think that's been like even beyond music, man. I think like people, like, once we started in Australia here, like our like specifically in Melbourne, like Victoria, where I'm based, like we were in probably one of the strictest lockdowns in terms of the rules. Like, I think it was crazy, even like in comparison to some of the rest of the world. Like, we were like really up there with like what we couldn't do. Like, we had a curfew. We had like 4 reasons to leave home, like pretty strict. And I think once we started like easing those restrictions and people started doing things again, I think it was just exhausting. Like being like going and hanging even with just friends. Like, so I think, like I can only imagine going and playing a show to, you know, lots of people in a crowd would have definitely like felt very different for sure, man.
It's like 0 to 100 right away.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's just such a different, you get used to the way you live, I guess. Yeah.
I slept so good that night. I really did.
Yeah, you
really
did.
did.
Yeah. That's
for
awesome,
sure.
man.
Yeah. Oh, one thing. So I just as like an extra little bonus thing, speaking of that live show, is I was just like feeling really, like I said, like really anxious. And then I thought of something that somebody told me a while ago that like really helped. And he's like a public speaker. He's pretty well known. And
awesome.
he told me, he's like, you know, anytime I start to feel really nervous before a show playing, or I feel anxiety, I just immediately try to remind myself that that's like the most selfish perspective you could have, because all of your attention's on yourself. And really it should be about catering to the crowd and like DJing to the crowd, feeling the vibe, putting out that good energy. And a lot of times if you're feeling really anxious, it's just because you're too self-centered. I was like, damn, dude, that's really good. That's so good. And so now before a show, I always like tell myself that, and it's just like kind of recenters me, puts me back into it.
That's huge. I feel like, that's like, I'm just thinking about that changes the perspective completely. It's like your nerves are like focused on yourself. It's like if you focus on the crowd, it's like, it changes that perspective. That's awesome.
Yeah, totally.
Man.
Yeah.
I have a few more questions I want to ask about your project in a second. But before we dive into that, one thing I wanted to ask is you've kind of worked with some fairly big names in the past. One thing, one person was Mac Miller, rest in peace. Machine Gun Kelly, the band Perry, and a few others. Yeah, man. Do you want to dive into any of those and kind of say what that was like working with any of those people?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, some of those were pretty short lived. A
Yeah.
lot of times, for anybody listening, if you didn't know, people on a major label, a lot of times their label wants to book studio time as they're touring to keep them writing so they just constantly have new material to work with.
Yeah.
And so that place, the lodge I used to work at, I mentioned, um, I started their Ableton Academy at the time.
Awesome.
And so there was a lot of big names coming through. Like Ariana Grande was there, and Mac Miller and Machine Gun Kelly. That's where I met them, and they toured through, and went downstairs into Mac's session and got to like really just see his workflow and like show him some pointers in Ableton and just kind of hang out and dude, that was like honestly one of the greatest moments is just meeting him for the first time there.
Yeah.
And he's hilarious. He was a hilarious dude.
Yeah.
And just like the realest person too. You know, it's like really refreshing when somebody of that caliber reaches that level of success or fame or whatever you want to call it. And then they're just like, they sit down and poop just like you do. It's like the most realist, genuine person, you know? And so got myself really blessed to be able to like see him in that element and just to talk to him and to show him some Ableton stuff. And he produced a lot of his own beats. So shout out to him for that. And such an amazing person.
Yeah, he was very much like involved with everything, which is rare for like an artist of that caliber. I remember like looking at some of his other videos and being like, this guy like knows what he's doing. Like, yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. I guess it's like one of those. Oh, sorry, you go.
Oh no, I was just gonna say I did a Philia remix to the song that was released later after he passed away.
Oh, that's awesome.
And that was a really fun track. That's actually one of the more popular Philia ones I didn't expect.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I guess it's also like one of those things for whether you're a producer wanting more opportunities or something. It's like being in one of those hubs, I guess, can like open up pathways, like, you know, to work with people and stuff like that. And obviously for you, like working at the lodge opened that in some way for you. So would you recommend like other producers out there kind of get involved in something like that? Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think music is so community centric.
Yeah.
That a lot of it is just finding that community in the first place and then just really engaging with those people and not try to sell them some, you know, some idea of yourself right away where it's like, hey, check out my shit. Like, you know, like if you were to walk up to some random person on the street and you just like hand them a flash drive and like, yo, check me out. I'm awesome. Like, they're probably just going to look at you and be like, who's this random person talking to me right now? You know what I mean? Like, they may or may not listen to it. They'll probably just delete it and keep the flash drive for their other storage. But I think the same's kind of true for even online communities in music. But first and foremost, I'd say just really get plugged in locally wherever you live.
Yeah.
And if you live in the middle of absolutely nowhere, consider a move to somewhere, you know, the nearest biggest city that maybe has the scene that you'd like to get involved in. And then just like give more than you can take, you know, like, and that's kind of how I feel is like, even still, you know, if I can provide value and help somebody else, I'm a firm believer in karma or whatever you want to call it. But eventually I think that comes back full circle at some point.
Right.
So I think that's a big thing. Just support your local artists that you really believe in and support. And then don't be afraid to put yourself out there, because I think once people start to see that generosity and you supporting others, they'll definitely take notice of you too.
Yeah, exactly. I think it just comes back down to like, just be a good person. You know, no one really has a reason to be like a dick to someone. I mean, especially when you hear about people like Mac Miller who are like have everything they want in a way. Like, well, obviously that's a different discussion. But that, you know, from the outside, they seem to have success and stuff like that, and then it's like they're still a nice person. It's like, like that's really cool.
Totally, man.
That's interesting you mentioned. It's like, yeah, if you live in the middle of nowhere, like move. I think like it's underrated advice, because there's one person who says this who I'm not like a huge fan of. I used to be a huge fan of this person before, but Gary V. I don't know if you're familiar
Oh,
with Gary
yeah,
V.
yeah. Gary, he's got his whole NFT thing now. Yeah, I
Yeah,
follow him
I
on
haven't been keeping
Instagram.
up. I haven't been keeping up with him, to be honest, for a while.
Yeah,
He does give a few nuggets of advice, but I also disagree with what a lot of he says. But one
yeah,
thing
me too.
yeah. One thing he does say, which I do agree with, is like if you want something and you're like, and you like want it, like move there. If it's not where you are right now, it's like I know that's like not an easy thing to just go up and like uproot your life. Obviously, it requires sacrifice, but
Yeah,
it's an underrated thing to do. Just like move, like that will
yeah,
help you. I
yeah,
mean, you don't necessarily need to move to like the hot spot every single time, but like if it's going to increase your chances of you getting the results you want or being amongst the right people or whatever, like just
yeah.
move. I think that's a huge underrated thing that you
Yeah,
should
I
do.
totally agree. I
Mm,
agree. I mean, and if you can't for whatever reason,
mm,
maybe your car just broke and your house is burned down or
yeah.
something and you can't afford it or whatever at the time, then I mean, the interweb is pretty huge. You can just go find communities online to start with,
Yes.
and like even just joining Facebook groups of
Mm,
people and contributing to that. I hate Facebook, to be honest, but there's other communities out there. Join the Discord server
mm,
of, say if you're in the UK and you absolutely love Cohen sound. I'm a fan
yeah.
personally. And they have a cool Discord server. Maybe
Yeah.
jump in there, and if that's the style of music you make and you want to connect with other people upcoming, prime example. You could jump in
Exactly.
there. They're sharing tracks, get to know those homies. Chances are there's probably other people that are in the UK as well, maybe growing and blowing up, and get to know those people, connect with them, maybe drop a
Mm,
collab. Everybody wins.
yeah. 100%. And that's something I was doing when I was younger and obviously couldn't like go out to clubs because I was into to electronic music pretty young. Like just being a part of like whether Facebook groups. There was, man, I don't know if you remember this website. There's this website called Plug DJ.
Plug DJ.
Yeah,
I've heard of that. Yeah.
yeah. It was like a website where you could essentially like it was like chat room sort of thing, but it was a bit more visual, and you could like basically queue up a song, and it would play it via like YouTube or SoundCloud, and it was like you each person DJ'd one song, and just kind of it was like a music sharing platform, really, centered around
Nice.
communities, and that was
That's
really
cool.
cool, man. Like that I met so many people that way. A lot of like producers who are kind of bigger now were in those rooms back in the day. Like I'm trying to think of a few people. Can't think of the names now.
Yeah.
Do you remember the vocalist Coma?
Yeah.
She was
Yeah.
kind of big for a while. She was in there.
Yeah.
There was a few
That's
other
cool.
people.
I
Yeah.
missed that. I missed that era.
Yeah, it was like
That's pretty wild.
2011, 2012, I think. Um, yeah, so that was a cool time. But like obviously Discord nowadays is like
Hmm.
so many like great Discords you can be a part of or
Yeah,
um
man. There's so many platforms like blowing up here and there.
yeah.
Like MySpace used to be really cool.
Mm.
I was talking to my friend the other day. I was like, whatever happened to Tom? Remember Tom? She's like, he was everybody's friend. He was the one guy that started MySpace. I don't know if you
Oh
ever were
yeah.
on there, but he
Yeah.
would like when you first joined, it would have his little face and his little geeky smile. He'd be like, "Hey, Tom's your friend." It's like, oh, and then now Tom has no friends. Poor guy. Just all of
Oh
his friends left him.
yeah. Oh, poor Tom.
Yeah, poor Tom. Thought that was
uh,
hilarious.
that was some good times, yeah.
Yeah,
Um yeah, man. Awesome. Well, we'll segue into your own music. So as you mentioned a couple of times, you've got your own music project, Philia, which
yeah,
is so you're writing a lot of the music yourself and then kind of performing it in a band context. Is that right?
yeah, yeah. So most of the time, I'll produce like a fully produced idea. Anywhere from like 32 bars to something that's almost completed. And then I'll
Mm,
usually hit up my two guys in my band and have them come over and just kind of sprinkle some icing on the cake and
awesome.
just kind of add their own element. And if I don't like it, usually I'll just like throw it into Ableton sampler and just turn it into a weird like wiggly sound and just throw it in there somewhere. But
awesome.
Yeah, it's been kind of weird. Like I kind of stumbled into this like songwriting process with them because I had all these fully produced songs before I met them that I was playing live.
Yeah.
And then I had to kind of go back and reconstruct the stems and figure out, okay, how can I tuck these guys in here and layer with them? So I kind of basically went back and reproduced, like 20 songs with these guys.
Wow.
And just kind of is like, all right, how can we pull this off live? Which I think worked out a lot to my advantage in a way because they're really talented and I trust them. And when you play, I'm sure you've been to a show where you've heard a song that you absolutely love, but then you go to a show and there's a different version of it, or it's a
Yes.
remix of it, or they do something different. It's like the most hype thing. It's great. Like people love it. And,
yeah.
And so that's kind of how the live band turned out. Like you'll hear a lot of studio versions from songs written before a year and a half ago. And it's got a different sound to it now, which is fun.
That's cool. Porter Robinson does that a lot with his live show, I've noticed. He like fully changes up the live versions. Like I remember like one of his like more chill songs, I think Fresh Static Snow, like back when he did his live show around like 2015, he did this like full like aggressive version live, and it was just like mind blowing, like those moments because you're expecting kind of the original and then it's just like what. Like I think especially if you're doing like more of a live thing where you have that flexibility to change it up or whatever. Yeah, that's such an underrated thing for a live show for sure.
Totally, man. And especially with like electronic music, like the production value is a big part of that too.
Yeah.
So something I've been playing with the last year and a half with some friends of mine is just how can we take a show that's good, like all the musical side, everything technically is solid and it's got the full sound of the live band, but also how do we take that and integrate that to lighting and production that syncs up with what you're hearing?
Yeah.
And so I've been working on some of that, like running OSC out of Ableton into like Resolume and some video aspects and things too. We're going to be playing with a lot more of that this next few months.
That's awesome.
It's a good time. Yeah. It's like the whole visual side of a show is, I feel like half of it to me.
That's awesome.
With the music. But
yeah, I think good visuals can make or break a show. Like, it makes it somewhat more memorable. Like, as much as we like, I like to kind of think that it's all about the music, and it is all about the music still. Like, I think that's the core thing when you go to see someone, right? Like, the visuals definitely help though, and I think it definitely makes it a way better experience. When you have that element, like something different as well, like. That's cool, man. I think there's a whole lot of cool stuff like you can do with OSC and all that. Like, that's such a powerful thing, like syncing up to lights and whatever.
It is, man. It's a black hole. I think like there's like in my mind with like electronic music, I think there's like almost two different kinds of shows. You've got like fully pre-programmed stuff like Deadmau5. Like Deadmau5 is like it's pretty much you're going to see almost like a movie. It's like he hits play. I don't think he does a lot of improvisation in his sets. I think a lot of it is very, very pre-programmed and structured, but it's dope. Like it's just this big production value thing, right?
Yeah.
And then you have a little more of the improvised side with maybe that sometimes can sacrifice a little bit of the production unless you really do it right. There's like more variables, and that's kind of the in between of where I'm at right now. Just trying to like do some more of that, but
yeah. I think the benefit is with a live show as well is you can make it as complicated or as simple as you really want it to. Like,
it's true.
If you're like not a very like super crazy talented drummer or musician or something, but you still want to do a live show, you can do, more of a loop based live show or something like that, which is
totally.
I do kind of think like, like helping, like letting it match your like skill level with performing is cool because like there are people out there who do a live show, but like they go too far down the rabbit hole and then the quality of the show suffers a bit because they're not like fully around everything they're doing. Whereas if they scaled it back a little bit and simplified it, they probably could do quite a good live show.
Totally.
Do you find your live show developing a bit more? I mean, as you kind of like go down that path a bit more?
Yeah, I've become a big fan of simplicity, kind of like what you said, of just like if I can make something easy and I don't have to think as much while I'm on stage, the better. So I do a lot of automating because I have you ever heard of Kofresi? He was on my podcast not long ago, but he's got an interesting setup. He's a standing drummer. Almost kind of like a cocktail kit, but it's not a cocktail kit. He's just got live cymbals and he's got his electric drum pads. And then he has an Ableton push that he does finger drumming on, and he just jumps around all over the place.
That's awesome.
I have almost the identical setup as him, but with a saxophone and a keyboardist. And then I have an APC 40, so I'll jump over when I'm not playing live drums, and I'll like effect what the keyboardist or saxophone's playing. So if I can make myself not have to think about what I have to do a lot of automation in my sets.
That's good. Yeah.
Just to try to simplify anything on stage, because I don't want to have to think too much. I just want to be able to get in that flow state and just kind of feel what I'm doing and interact with the audience more.
And like playing one like instrument or sound or whatever at a time sort of thing, and focus on that moment rather than like tweaking 5 envelopes while playing a riff or something.
Dude, trust me, I've got stories, man. Like, it's like, there's been some scary times on stage too when you have too much to do.
Oh yeah, I can only imagine. Like, I mean, back in the day when you're in a band, you just played the guitar. Like when you're an electronic musician playing live, it's like you could just do way too much.
Oh, totally. Yeah, for sure. Actually, here's an unrelated but kind of funny story. I ended up playing drums, and it was like a tour. And it was like my first like big show. I think there was like 1,200 people there, and it was in Ohio. And I was in the band. All I did was play drums a long time ago. I was so stoked that I broke my drumstick, that like all this energy was like coming through me. And I just like, rather than being a sane human being and just like slightly tossing the stick into the crowd, I like aggressively threw it way too hard and ended up hitting some girl in the face.
Oh no.
In the front row with a broken drumstick. Dude, I still feel terrible about it. I really, and I remember the bass player just stopped and looked at me, and he's like, what the hell, man? What did you do? And everybody in the front saw it, and they're like, "Oh shit!" And dude, I felt terrible, man. And then afterwards, the manager comes up to me and he's like, "Someday you're going to be walking through like a grocery store in this part of the country, and some girl with an eye patch is going to come up to you and just punch you in the face. Be like, I know it was you."
Oh, that's rough. Yeah, it's like the nerves can kind of get over you in that moment. You're like, instead of just tossing it, I'm just gonna.
It was brutal, man. Yeah. I'm sorry if she's listening out there. I'm so sorry. You can punch me if you want. I deserve it.
Oh man, that's great.
Yeah.
But yeah, man. I think it's Oh, sorry, you go.
Oh, I was just gonna ask you, like, for your live setup, are you using CDJs or?
Yeah, so I'm just DJing at the moment for my music.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, I used to kind of make more chill hip hop stuff for a while. I did do a live set once or twice for that, just kind of running the tracks out of Ableton, and I had a bit of vocals and stuff that I sung over. And played some kind of riffs over the top on like my little MIDI keyboard. It was a very kind of bare bones live setup, as like it was super simple, and I didn't really have to think about doing a lot, which was at that time. I'm sure if I progressed down that path more, I probably would have expanded it a bit. But yeah, just at the moment, just DJing. Which, I mean, to be honest, if you like DJing, I think I like kind of diving into the more broader spectrum of DJing. I feel like you can kind of just like rock up and you know, play tracks. I'm trying to kind of slowly go down like a bit more of a like trying to integrate, you know, being able to play multiple tracks at the same time and like overlaying them and doing some more creative stuff. That's like a path I want to head down a bit more, because I feel like DJing is one of those things you can once again make it as complicated or as simple as you want it to be. And I think you can do some interesting stuff live with DJing that not everyone is doing. because it is possible just to rock up and kind of do a normal mix, which is fine too.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it's so nice to roll up to a show with the flash drive
mm,
rather than carrying like, an entire drum set and your laptop and the controller and everything else,
yeah.
It's the convenience factor is cool. And that's kind of the standard. I mean, you go to a lot of festivals and
Yeah.
anybody is just DJing usually a lot of times. Just pull up with the CDJ. It's convenient. It's easy. It's nice.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you love it too. Like I actually just enjoy DJing. Like, by all means, if you don't really enjoy it and you want to expand it a bit, you could do a full live set. But man, I remember Pendulum's live set. Man, I like looked at the
But that was wild.
that
I've
it
never
was
seen
so.
them live.
Oh man, I never saw them either, which kind of sucks. I just like did some research online and stuff like that. I think like, but that's probably an example of like way too complicated, because like they had 6, I think, band members on stage, and like drums, guitars, synths. They had a mixing desk on stage too, so like they did their mix down, which is crazy, like live on stage.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
each of them had 2 laptops running, I think, Linux, and
Wow.
they had an effects, like a VST, like effects chain on each of them that they could switch for each song.
That's wild.
And it was like a redundancy system, so if one laptop failed, it would
Yeah.
revert to the other one.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. No, that's huge for playing big shows. Redundancy is key for
yeah, I
something
think
like that.
Disclosure uses it as well in
Yeah.
their Ableton set for their live set. But I
Yeah.
think Rob Swire just said like, nah, like that's why he kind of stopped doing the live shows, because it was just way too much stress, like sorting all that out.
Yeah, it's a lot, man. Actually, it's funny you mentioned that redundancy. Laura Escade, shout out Laura. I feel like I talk about her a lot. She's great. She was on my podcast as well, but she is the founder of Electronic Creatives, and she trains
Cool.
a lot of playback engineers. But playback meaning that it's your job to work with the artist and front of house and production team to be able to make the artist stems line up for backing tracks for a live show. And a
Awesome.
big part of her process is redundancy. That's a
Yeah.
big part of what she does. So I was fortunate. Me and 15 other people, we went through like an interview process and were accepted into her Electronic Creatives master track, meaning that
Awesome.
it was kind of almost like an interview process to work with Electronic Creatives. And I had a couple calls to do things with them. But yeah, it's a great team, and they do a lot of setup for like anybody from Ariana Grande to like The Weeknd, a lot of huge name artists in that realm she works with. She does a great
Yeah.
job.
That's like a whole thing, I guess, especially like for those high caliber pop artists, they would need people to
Mhm.
like make sure that's like rock solid.
Oh, totally, man. It's actually it's a funny story. I don't know how much I could say, but there was a really well-known, well, I'll just say it, Lizzo. I got a call to do playback with her
Oh
with
yeah.
that team, and it didn't work out because she wanted an all-female crew. We found that out after I
Ah,
was about to
right.
fly out to Coachella, which I totally respect. Like, that's really cool. I support fully women in the music industry. I think it's great. I was
Yeah.
like, that's totally fine. No worries. There'll be other projects. That's cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, for one reason or another, her playback went down, her rig.
Oh
And the other
no.
person that was doing, yeah, she had to sing Coachella. This was like 2 years ago. Like half of her set was a cappella because the rig went down.
Oh man, that's
It
rough.
was like on the news, and yeah, I felt really bad for them. Uh, but yeah, that's just another thing is like if you're gonna be playing major main stage Coachella and stuff, you got to have some kind of good redundancy system that's people know what they're doing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Like, yeah, that would be yeah, it's crucial. It's like that's like half the like, when you don't have a band, especially, or you don't have like a full set of musicians. It's like that is the band.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Oh
for
man,
sure.
that's cool. One thing I wanted to ask about your writing process. So obviously, you mentioned um, with like working with actual musicians and who come in and play over the top of what you're producing and stuff like that. Um, do you find even before that though, like, do you find yourself thinking of that in advance, like, or do you kind of just write and then solve that issue later? Because I feel like you definitely have to take that into account a lot of the times when producing.
Yeah. I do. Yeah, I totally do. My buddy Andy, who plays keys, he's a big fan of Roland. And so I know that he has a lot of really awesome pad sounds.
Yeah.
And he's incredible at chord progressions. Like he's so good with his chord progressions. So I can kind of build the beat and the structure. And a lot of times I'll build a drop without them. So I'll do a lot of the drop build out, and then kind of the in between, like the build up to the drop, or even like the post drop. I'll have him usually. I'll leave space for him to kind of leave more of a melodic breakdown of like a pad, or like even sprinkle some bells or things on top of what I'm doing. So yeah, I try to think of that in terms of like creating space for them for sure in the mix. Because that's the thing, is like a lot of times I'm doing subtractive producing these days. And what I mean is like I'll build out and I'll create like this big thing. And then I'll kind of go back and listen to it and be like, what doesn't need to be here? And like, what am I not really feeling? And I'll cut that out and see if it just sounds better without it. And then maybe add something different that doesn't take up as much space, or just kind of thinking through, I think a lot of times space is what really accentuates the instruments that really need to shine. So being able to think about how much more space can I create in my mixes? How can I take away more instruments until I'm getting the vibe that I'm really wanting out of this part of the track or whatever?
Yeah. Yeah, that's key. I think even like for those of you who are listening who work with vocalists, I think that's like a key. Like you don't want to fill the mix too much with just stuff that takes away attention from what's going to be a vocal. Like I think it's cool to like still have like, I mean, I personally love the interplay between like a vocal and like a main lead line or like a main melody sort of thing. But it's definitely, you still need to leave space for it. Otherwise, it's just
man,
a struggle.
And if things like, if you really like both elements but it just isn't working together perfectly, I mean, sidechaining is so important. Like basic, just I'm using more sidechaining now than I've ever produced with, just because, I mean, even just for fun creative effect, but also for like a mixing perspective to make things play nice together.
Yes,
for sure.
Even if it's just a little bit, like some tracks call for a more aggressive sidechain, which is like more of the creative effect, I guess you would call it. But even just a little bit, like from a mixing perspective, can just really allow things to gel together.
Totally.
And also like sidechaining things that's not the kick drum. Like I find like sometimes like even just like if you have like a vocal come in for a second over a synth line, like ducking the synth a little bit under the vocal, like stuff like that could sometimes be what the track calls for.
Oh, for sure. And like sidechaining a gate too. Like I know I follow Cohen Sound on their Patreon. They actually upload some really good video tutorials for Ableton users.
Nice.
And they posted one, I think it was yesterday, and it was how to use gating for sidechaining. And they'll basically take a melody line of like bells or like piano keys stabs, and then they'll like use a gate on their bass and then sidechain those key stabs. Or sidechain that bass to those key stabs, like things like that. Like even just for a creative production standpoint can be really dope.
So is it triggering the bass on when those key stabs come in, or is it ducking? Yeah, wow.
Exactly. So then you can just mute that key stab track, and then the bass plucks and hits are just opening a bass loop to hit at certain points, which is really fun.
That's fun.
Yeah.
I need to try that.
Hacks. Yeah, I know. Dude, I saw that the other day too, and I was like, I'm going to do that. We do a lot more of that now.
Yeah. Cohen Sound are like great. They're on like another level.
No, for real. Those dudes are nutty. I love it.
Yeah, man. On speaking of like production like techniques, is there any like cool stuff you've been doing in the studio lately that that has been fun, or that you're just kind of experimenting with?
Yeah, man. With my podcast, I've just been really, really blessed to have new toys sent to me every once in a while.
Yeah, nice.
So I started diving in a little bit with the Touche. Are you familiar with that?
No, what's that? I'll leave a link for those who don't know. But
yeah. Shout out to Touche, great company. It's a French company, and it's basically this thing right here. I'm gonna try to pull it up. It's this. And it's like a long rectangular button, but it's very pressure sensitive.
Yeah.
So you can use it like to sustain notes. You can use it to do modulation just by gliding your fingers up and down it.
That's
and
sick.
then you can push down on it. It kind of feels like almost like a sustain pedal type of thing is what it looks like.
Yeah.
But then has a sensitivity knob, and it has its own like standalone plugin that you can use for different sounds that come with it. But
Yeah.
it's really dope if you get their upgraded model. And doing that with my Moog Sub 37 synth,
Damn.
the thing is really dope if you pair them up together, because then I can run MIDI out of the synth and then basically push this button to create like pulsing or like gliding effects and things with my synth bass. It's kind of really fun. So I love that. But yeah, shout out to Moog users out there. I love my Moog.
Nice.
But yeah, that's been fun. And Ableton 11, any Ableton users out there, has a lot of really cool new effects and things. I've been having a lot of fun with let's see, I can go into my audio effects folder. Having a lot of fun with the chorus ensemble effect.
Yeah, it's a good one.
It's a new chorus. It's not bad. I really like the upgraded Redux for like saturation.
Yeah.
I'm doing some weird stuff with that. There's also the Spectral Resonator, which I'm sure a lot of people are on right now.
That's very cool. I like that one.
Yeah, Spectral Resonator is really dope. I put it on like a return track, and then I'll send like bass synth to it, or even a kick drum. If you just throw a kick drum through it, you can tune the kick and do some crazy weird sounds with like percussive elements on that.
That's sick.
Yeah, it's super fun. But yeah, there's a lot of good upgrades with Ableton Live 11 for sure. And yeah, just there's a couple Max for Live devices I've been enjoying as well. Let's see. I have actually I'm going to do a podcast on that. Just like sharing. There's like billions of them out there.
Oh man, it's like a rabbit hole in itself. Even just like the LFO, using like the LFO modulators to like modulate random parameters, like that's something I've been doing a lot recently, which is fun.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and a lot of like the Shaper. Have you played with Shaper?
Yeah, it's kind of like LFO Tool, like similar.
It is.
Yeah.
It's similar to LFO Tool. Yeah, that's kind of nice. Good Max for Live device. Also, who was it? I should have like thought about this before I said anything. Who was it? I got Goodhertz. They've got some really fun stuff. I've been playing with some Goodhertz lately.
Lossy. Yeah, Lossy.
Such just a good for plugin. Weird textures. Yeah, some really fun textural things you can create with that.
There's nothing like it, because it's basically like emulating MP3, bad quality MP3 codecs, which is like fun for just sound design. Yeah,
it is, man. It totally is. And then OX Sound with Soothe and Spiff.
Oh yeah,
you ever played with those? Yeah,
I've played with OX Soothe 2 a bit. I also use the Smooth Operator, which is like the new one from Baby Audio, similar kind of thing, but a bit more simple.
Okay,
it's good. I did a video on it on our YouTube channel. Actually, I'll leave a link for that. But yeah, man, that the spectral like suppression plugins are really helpful.
It is. Yeah. Have you ever played with Shaperbox by Cable Guys?
I actually need to look into it more. They sent me they sent it to me, and I haven't had the chance to dive into it yet.
Dude, you got to man. Like a couple months ago I started really going heavy with it, and it's wild. They've got some really cool, it's very simple, it's pretty straightforward stuff, but if you like to do any kind of weird like bassy experimental bass stuff, they make the tools are so easy to play with and just create some weird sounds and rhythms with like synths and basses and noises.
Yeah, my and even, I think you can use it for sidechain as well too, right? Like I think
so.
Yeah. My friend Andre, who makes music under Copycat, he uses it for.
Oh yeah, he's great, man. I actually paid for one of his webinars a while ago. He did like a webinar thing on one of his songs.
What was it? I forget the name of the company. He did like the funny promo video.
Yeah.
He used my camera for that. Yeah,
That's hilarious.
He's a good mate of mine. Yeah, we've been friends for a while.
Yeah, I love his sound design, man.
Yeah,
he makes great stuff. Yeah, because he's in Australia. I forgot about that.
Yeah. He's because he's like he grew up kind of. We both are from like Queensland. We both moved down to Victoria here. I'm gonna get him on this podcast at one point.
Do it.
Yeah. No, Shaperbox is crazy. I definitely need to dive into it a bit more. Yeah, man. No, it's
love
awesome.
Shaperbox.
Yeah.
Well, what else have you been using as far as like plugins that you really love?
What have I been using? Honestly, man, I've been kind of trying to like simplify my like processes to like more stock tools lately. I think there's I have these like phases where I like dive into the stock tools like of Ableton, or you can do this in whatever DAW you're in, by the way. It doesn't have to necessarily just be Ableton, but like, and then I have like a phase with plugins where I might try a few out and see what works for me, and then I kind of just end up going back to stock tools. They're just so good, like especially in Ableton. I love like even some of the stock synths. Like I've been playing a bit with Electric, Ableton Electric, which is underrated just for like key sounds.
It is.
One thing I didn't realize about Electric, and you may know this, but it's like the same people who made Lounge Lizard. Just
really,
yeah, it's AAS, Applied Acoustic Systems, I think it is.
I didn't realize that.
Coding for Electric. I think the only difference is that like Lounge Lizard has a few more algorithms and things you can change on it. Plus, it has included effects. But if you use like the included effects in Ableton, you can get pretty close. Like it's actually like convincingly like you can hear that it's the same.
That's awesome. Coding. I didn't realize that.
It's super underrated because I feel like if you load it up just on its own, it's a bit dry sounding. But if you process it with some nice effects and like chorus or reverb, a bit of distortion or amp or whatever, you can do that. I've been loving that lately. Made a tune
just
around
run anything through Ableton Saturator, it just sounds better.
Yeah. Oh, it's such a simple tool. The soft sine mode. Soft sine mode.
Yes, soft sine mode's nice.
Was one of my favorites.
But yeah, Electric got a new interface update too with 5.11, so it's way more user friendly than it used to be, in my opinion.
Yeah, it was a bit of it did look not that nice before exactly. 11. It was a bit overwhelming.
Pretty much. It's true. It needed a facelift.
Yeah, man. So no, I've been mostly just doing that. I've been loving Valhalla Supermassive just for like big luscious reverb textures. That's a fun plugin.
Love that. Yeah, and that's free too, right?
Yeah, I know, it's crazy, man.
It's so nice you just gave that away.
Yeah, I think they gave it away in lockdown. And everyone was like, yeah, stoked. It's a good plugin.
All my friends make fun of me because I'm like an evangelist for Valhalla Shimmer.
Yes,
I put that on everything, dude.
It's a great. Like I used it yesterday. Like it's for that specific like washed. I think it's the Taj Mahal preset. I use a lot on big like pads or reverbs or on vocals even, like to get those vocal kind of pad textures. It's great.
Totally.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, the big ethereal type of sound.
Yeah, man.
It's like a giant bathroom sound, but cleaner and better.
Yeah. It's a great plugin. Definitely go check out Shimmer if you haven't got that one. Awesome, man. We'll probably start to wrap up. But one thing I wanted to ask is, what have you got coming up in the next 0 to 12 months?
Yeah, man. Right now I just launched a new masterclass for myself personally, for anybody who wants to go deeper or have help releasing more tracks in Ableton Live. So if anybody's interested, you can check that out. But right now I've just been doing a lot of podcasting, a lot of this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And just booking some more guests, getting more people on, and booking shows. Got a couple shows coming up that I'm pretty excited about.
Awesome.
And just writing more music, man. Just constantly writing, making music. I've been into biking lately, doing some more biking.
Nice.
Trying to stay healthy, kill those bad viruses.
Important, yeah.
Just gotta stay healthy. Drinking water.
Nice, man.
yeah, it's been good. So I guess if anybody wants to stay connected, I'm an Instagrammer. So
Awesome.
at Philia Music. So it's like PHILIA Music. That's usually where I'm hanging out these days.
Sweet. I'll chuck that down below as well, so people can give you a follow there, man.
Cool.
I like to end all of the interviews with this question because I mean, obviously, as producers, we all kind of learn from our mistakes as we journey with music.
Yeah.
But if you had a time machine and you could change one thing that you did in the past, what would it be?
If I'm a time machine and I can change one thing in the past.
Yeah. Or like recommend something that producers don't do that you've done so they don't make the same mistake.
I think like, man, that's a hard question. That's so hard. I honestly would say like, I don't know. I kind of live my life as if like no regrets kind of thing. So like that's just kind of how I live. But if I had to pick something in time travel, I'd go back and tell myself to, I guess, be less afraid of producing what I think other people want to hear. And like be more focused on just producing music that like makes me happy and what I want to put out into the world.
Awesome.
You know, sometimes it's easy to get in my own head at times, as I'm sure other people feel the same way, where it's like I have to produce something that's like sounds like this guy or sounds like this other person. But I heard a really good quote that says comparison kills creativity.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's really true. So like not compare myself to other people. The world does not need another dead mouse. That's for damn sure. Like we don't need another one of those other, you know, they just be you and just make music that you love. Put it out there shamelessly. Have fun.
Exactly. And it's like dead mouse isn't looking for another dead mouse to sign to Mousetrap, right?
Yeah, exactly, dude. Exactly.
Yeah. That's awesome, man.
For sure.
Sweet.
Yeah.
That and going back and not throwing the stick at the girl in the crowd.
Right. Yeah. Also that. Like, yeah. Don't hurt your fans.
Don't hurt your fans.
Don't injure them at shows. Yeah, that's a big one. Definitely. If you take away anything today, just remember that.
Awesome.
It's awesome. Man. Dude, thanks so much for having me, man. This was fun.
Yeah, no, thanks for coming on, Dan. This has been a blast. As I said, I'll leave your social link for Instagram at Philia Music in the show notes. But yeah, man, been a blast. Yeah, we'll catch you soon.
Yeah, let's do it again, man. Take it easy.
See you, man.